So you're about to watch my review of Resident Evil 3 Remake back in the year 2020 when it was actually released. And the reason I'm bringing it to you now, re-edited and a bit more fit for purpose, is because we've just hit the 5-year anniversary for the Resident Evil 3 Remake. And this video is going to be followed up by a more up-to-date and in-depth retrospective on Resident Evil 3 Remake, so please look forward to that. But please enjoy. I'm sure a lot of you will agree with my thoughts at the time of this game's release, but I'll leave it there and I'll see you in the next video. Resident Evil 3 it's quite a disappointing game. When I first played Resident Evil 3, I had in my mind at all times that this is my first playthrough and my opinions will change over the course of the next playthrough or so. So when I first played this game, I was excited, you know? It was like, wow, this is a great game, you know? I'm having fun playing this game. Story elements come in, more mechanics, gameplay mechanics come in, and then you complete the game, and then you can go and unlock and go through harder difficulties. So far, this sounds like any other Resident Evil game, pretty much. Minus the fact that after you complete the game and having unlocked those difficulties, you are given the option of playing through with or without special abilities and infinite ammo, infinite weapons, that kind of thing. But that is it. That is it. You can complete the game, go through the difficulties again, but one of the things that I found to be a little bit too... And I'm going to have no holds barred here. You know, it's okay, you can do it, everyone can do this, it's fine. Which separates the true hardcore, I'm going to fucking get this, to the casual player. And I think there needs to be a separation because you need to feel that kind of achievement. People like to feel achievements. That's why we have achievements and trophies, right? But this is why Capcom give you the actual option to go through the game on Inferno mode, the hardest mode, with an infinite rocket launcher. Anyone could do that. And you can see that when you look on your PlayStation, for example. I can't really say anything for the Xbox because I don't own an Xbox One console. But when you go onto your PS4 trophies, when you compare Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, you will see that more people have platinumed Resident Evil 3 than Resident Evil 2. Because in Resident Evil 2, the criteria for getting infinite ammo was way harder. So that's what they've done with Resident Evil 3. It's a point system now. So anyone can get them. If they play the game enough, it is yours. Whatever you want, it is yours. So it took me, 3, maybe 4 playthroughs of Resident Evil 3 to get the rocket launcher, get straight onto the harder difficulties, ace it and get the trophy. Because that's what was required and that's what I did. That's what a lot of people have done. When you look at Resident Evil 2 Remake, you've got to complete the game in, 2.5 hours on the hardest setting. And you can't use infinite ammo. You've got to be good at the game. Now, I'm sorry, if you're not particularly good at the game, that's fine. You've got the story there and you've got everything else there. But you shouldn't mark down achievement. But that's what's happening these days. It's not just Resident Evil. That's what's happening with a lot of games these days. It's, come on, more people can play this game. Let's just go on. You can do. It's a shame for me, but. There we go. That's an overall kind of consensus of where my mind is at this particular time. Now, let's get on to the actual review. So from the get-go, you insert the game. Nemesis is right there in front of you. So it's like, Nemesis is going to be prominent in this game. Look at this bad boy. He's a scary motherfucker. He greets you at the very first point in the game, the start menu. The intro of this game comes nowhere near as close as the original game.
This is Chopper Delta, preparing to drop off at area E95070. Over.
What are they?
They're coming out of the fucking elevators. Where do they come from? Never. It's pointless. Die! That zombie getting up. I love that bit. But it's so like, you know the score, shit's hit the fan, fucking hell. But this one is a little bit more subdued, as the times really are in video games. In certain video games, not everything, that's going to be unfair to say, but it just feels a little bit more subdued and reserved.
This pandemic has spread faster than any disease in modern history.
Angry mobs around the city, burning buildings. Authorities are bracing for more rioting tonight.
He was knocked unconscious yesterday.
A citywide emergency is declared.
The CDC has quarantined the lower Midwestern region of the U.S.
And having watched it the first time, it didn't personally give me a kind of pump. You know, like, I can't wait for this. Then you wake up as Jill in this dream sequence, and this is another bit I'm not particularly fond on. She looks in the mirror, she starts bleeding, she's getting infected. She wakes up, and then you go back into the bathroom again. You're absolutely fine, and you take control of Jill properly. The problem I have with that sequence, that dream sequence, is that her lack of sleep is only, and the consequences of what's happened beforehand aren't really that prevalent. They just basically forget about this whole lack of sleep, what's happened to the past sequence. I'm not asking for anything too elaborate. It's just, I see past it. It's very transparent to me. And it's a very cheap, and if I may say so, quite a lazy way of implementing what would have been Jill, infected by the Nemesis in the original game. Now it's just a couple of dream sequences. So that's basically my problem with this particular sequence. Then Brad calls you up, and the Nemesis makes his appearance. It's a interesting look, and I'm not down with the way that they've done this introduction to Nemesis, as opposed to Jill, Brad, we gotta all that crap, you know. But again, the original introduction to Nemesis was like, oh fuck you know, and now I've got to fight this guy, you know. It's a great sequence, you know. Brad gets fucked, and then Jill watches on, does fuck all about it, but you know, it is what it is. And then you fight Nemesis. The problem I have, there's a couple of problems to say the least I have with Nemesis in this game. Nemesis has a habit of grabbing Jill. Look at this guy. He can grab Jill by the neck or by the head, Sagat style, or old school Nemesis style, right? And just simply go crunch, crack, you're dead. He had her in his hand, puts her on the ground when he could have killed her, and then says, you know what, I'm gonna stamp. No, she gets out the way, and then there's a chase sequence. This happens throughout the whole game. Now, I understand that you can't kill your main character, and I understand that you have to make Nemesis look strong. He doesn't look strong in this game. He looks stupid and weak. There's a sequence, a very scripted sequence, and I'm jumping the gun here. This is something that I do, but I'm going to do it. Where you're running away from Nemesis, he's on the cars, he's got his rocket launcher, and he fires a few rockets at you. The last one, it cuts into a cutscene, and he fires another one. It lands right next to Jill, and it conveniently pushes her over the barricade, or wherever the fuck it is, and then she's like, "Argh!" and then gets back up, and she's limping. That's fine, she's limping, she's selling it. But why isn't she blown up? Why isn't she missing a leg? It was a rocket launcher. That just solidifies that the Nemesis got his rocket launcher from fucking Toys R Us, or something. You know, it's ineffective. And you've made him significantly weaker. Especially, and again, not saying anything new here, when compared to Mr. X, or even compared to the original Nemesis. But anyway, you managed to escape from Nemesis, you reunite with Brad, and then Brad gets chomped. This is a bit of a different way of meeting the end for Brad Vickers.
Door behind you, go!
But I wasn't too opposed with that. The thing that kind of, Brad is known as Chickenheart. He's the scaredy cat of the group. But he's been in Stars, and he's a member of Stars for a reason. So he's not going to be like, oh, fuck this shit, kind of thing. He's gonna be brave to a certain extent. He's going to do his job. So at first I kind of thought, he should be more of a pussy. But the more I thought about it, the more it kind of made sense that, well, obviously he would still be a brave guy. He's in Stars. He's going to have that kind of brave quality. You make your way to the chopper. You meet Dario along the way. Again, the original Dario is better because this one is seen to be a bit more comedic, which is fine. It works for this particular game. I just think it was better in the last one. I just lost my daughter out there. Chopper blows up. Nemesis stalks you. You get into a car. You crash the car. Nemesis is after you. Then Carlos shows up. His introduction is...
Hey! Fuckface!
Hey, easy, lady. I got you.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Name's Carlos, and I'm saving you. Come on, let's get you someplace safe.
I thought, okay, I wasn't expecting that. Carlos then introduces you to Mikhail. This Mikhail, it's fine. There's nothing really that I personally feel strongly about this particular version of Mikhail. I felt that the other Mikhail, the original Mikhail, was better. Jill, get out of the cable car now! So your mission then is to get out of the city. You end up doing a couple of puzzles, nothing too elaborate. And then at some point you go to the power station and you have to activate these power outlets where you meet the drain demos. And then you're off to escape. Now, Nemesis cuts you off. And this is where Nemesis shines the most, because he's still bipedal. And he's still on your ass. And to a certain extent, during this particular segment, he's, as they were quoted, untethered. To a certain extent.
Kidding me?
But before you can even leave the city, or this part of the city, you are diverted to go into the sewers. And we're introduced to the new Hunter Gammas, which I actually like. They reminded me of dinosaurs, just walking on them two legs, just coming at you like that massive mouth. I thought they were great. They did shit me up. And then you are again reunited with Nemesis, who grabs your head, pulls you out from that hole, drops you, and says, I've got a flamethrower, I'm going to try this. And then you begin the chase. So there's another instance of plot armor right there. Again, it's made to move the story along, it's part of the game, but it does nothing for Nemesis. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. He's an idiot. But then you got this little cool segment. No matter how many times I've played this particular part in the game, I still feel like that kind of, yeah, this is awesome, Which is it's just what I want in my games, in my Resident Evil games, But yeah, you're on the scaffolding, that whole building area. Music's kicking in, it feels great, and then you have a proper boss fight with Nemesis. Now, different opinions on this boss fight. I happen to like it. It's not particularly hard, but when you're playing it for the first time or two, it's like, oh god, here we go again. But I enjoy it because you are fighting Nemesis. He is restricted, you know, he's got his massive flamethrower there, and he is trying to run after you, and he's got all these kind of weird moves where he's kind of firing up at the sky with this flamethrower and it's all coming down on you kind of thing. The charge move he does, it can get quite tense, but I would consider that personally the best boss fight in the game. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned Carlos. I've mentioned him very briefly, but this particular version of Carlos I think is still cool. I like him, he's pretty decent, and I don't dislike him at all, you know, so I think he's, I think this is probably one of, in this particular game, a better adaptation, certainly than Mikhail. But you move on, Nemesis comes back, and then the scripted event begins where you're running away from him and his rocket launcher. Once you've successfully dodged the Nemesis during this particular section, you get to play as Carlos during the RPD. This is a cool segment in the game. I do like this particular segment. Again, to look at the old game, it was Jill that did this, of course. In this one, you're with your colleague. Your colleague is T. I don't really have any connection with this guy. He's a backup guy, and he basically is there to serve as a backup. There is someone in this game who I think really does steal the show, and I've not mentioned them yet, and I will very soon. And once you've done that, you are reintroduced to Jill, who is now confronted by a new Nemesis. Now, when I first saw this, I wasn't sure what to think. After playing it a second time and so on, I disliked the model even more. The fact that he's no longer bipedal on two walking legs coming after you signified to me that that's the end, man. That's pretty much the end of Nemesis, the Nemesis that we know. And you're introduced to a boss fight which makes no sense. He's going after you, and then Nemesis, who is designed to come for you and other STARS members and just to cut out all the bullshit, runs around and around and around and around and around and around. So this boss fight is severely out of character. After you defeat that boss, you are reintroduced to Carlos. You go into the hospital to make a vaccine for Jill, who has unlimited amounts of plot armor in this particular game. The hospital section is cool, by the way. It's a very cool segment. You're reintroduced to the hunters, which look great, by the way. There's a couple of moments in the game where, you know, it's like, what the hell do I do here? There's a segment where there's 2 or 3 hunters in this particular room, and it's like you've got to go in there and trick them to coming out of that room, or you just got to go in there and grab what you want and just hope they don't kill you, whatever your strat is. There's a few segments in this game, especially in this hospital segment, where you will see zombies like standing there, and you can shoot them, and they won't move. So it's another way to feel kind of safe in this game. It happens in other parts of the game as well, but you will see like a few zombies in this particular segment in the hospital. You shoot them and they just stand there, and you can just keep shooting them like that. Doesn't matter. That takes away from the tension that should be there to begin with, like the previous game before it. That's when the Resident Evil 4 callback comes in, and you have to hold the area with Carlos, and you're shooting all the zombies and a couple of hunters, whatever. Then you take control of Jill, and you start coming towards the end of the game now. One of the main antagonists, apart from Nemesis, is Nikolai. Nikolai is a devious, charismatic bad guy. Sure, he might be generic, but the fact that he's not one note just gives the game a bit of extra life, where you've got a simple kind of enemy, in a sense simple, with Nemesis. You've got a more human side with Nikolai, but I genuinely believe that this interpretation of Nikolai is the best representation. Obviously even more so than the original game. I just can't help but, you know, I love to hate this guy. In actual fact, I don't really hate him. I mean, sure, his ideals might be a little bit extreme, to say the least. But as a character, you know, I feel like he brings quite a lot. So for me, Nikolai is the star of the show. I wouldn't mind seeing Nikolai again, as long as it made absolute sense. Maybe that's asking a bit too much.
I don't think wisdom I've been trying to impart on you is getting through. Now I know you can't put a price on life. But I'm in this business to get paid.
But anyway, you're doing the warehouse area, so you're introduced to the Paleheads. Now, when I saw these, I thought, hang on a second, these are the guys from Resident Evil 2, like the original Resident Evil 2, the naked zombies. And to me, they basically are. But they've got their own kind of mechanic. You have to really fuck up their heads. A Magnum's going to sort that out, no problem. That's their unique characteristic. But I couldn't help but think, why weren't these guys in Resident Evil 2 Remake? Because they had naked zombies in Resident Evil 2. There are other things in this game similar to this, which I will definitely address later on. You reunite with T, who then accompanies you down this long corridor. Nemesis is right behind them somehow. Just shows up, and out of the two, out of the one he's meant to kill and the other person, he goes for the other person. He kills T. Because one, they have to get rid of T, and two, because it's meant to convey an action set piece. It's meant to instigate some emotion in you, right? That's why it's there, and it's meant to move the story along. So again, going back, why didn't Nemesis just go after, like, take her? Do you know what I mean? Plot armor galore in this. You evade Nemesis again, and then you're in the laboratory, Nest 2, so there's another nest now. It's a decent enough section, you know, there's a puzzle or so in this particular area. Yeah, you just grab the samples, you mix them about, and then you get out of there, basically. There's some set pieces there which are very, very tense in places. And then you're reintroduced again to Nemesis, of course. There's a sequence where you're being dragged and all you have to do is hold up. That's not fun, Capcom. That's a lazy attempt to, again, push the story along. And also, it's another example of a weak design for Nemesis. You get through that. You meet up with Carlos in this kind of acid dispensing area where you basically do the same boss fight with Nemesis again, where he's running around with a few tweaks and some zombies this time. That is very lazy, rushed. These are things other people have said as well, and it's absolutely true. Then you meet up with Nikolai, have a bit of a very short back and forth, and then Nemesis crops up again. He is now his final form, and then you've got the boss fight, which is probably, to me, the second best boss fight in this game. It's simple, there's a callback to it, it's quite Resident Evil 2 in a way, and you complete that and you confront Nikolai and you do an extra bit where you shoot Nikolai and complete the game. No sign of Barry anywhere, nothing like that. They don't want to go too far with this particular version of Resident Evil 3, and you complete the game, and that's it. Now, on my first playthrough, this took me around about 8 hours, I think, something like that. This is a short Resident Evil game. That's not necessarily a bad thing. To me, Resident Evil has always been about replayability. Play it again. It definitely helps when you have multiple endings, different scenarios, different characters to play, and extra modes to play near the end. The original game, to me, feels longer. I'm not sure what the facts are on these two when you compare them in terms of length, but because of the set pieces, because of the adventure where it takes you in the original game, it feels more chunky, beefed out, and it gives you more incentive to play. Let's not forget, certainly not forget, as well as the multiple endings, the choice mechanic in the game. And also the fact that on different playthroughs, ammo changes wherever you go. Now they've addressed that to a certain extent with different kind of difficulties, where you get the Magnum pretty much straight away. The problem with this game, just like Resident Evil 2 Remake, when you're looking at criticisms, is that if it ain't broke, exactly, don't fucking fix it. A lot of people were pissed off that the clock tower wasn't there. A lot of people were pissed off that a lot of things weren't there. And instead, a new kind of fresh take on it was implemented. What I believe you should do is keep the core fundamentals that made what the original was, how it was so successful in the first place. You got to keep that back, because that's what a lot of your fans wanted. The newer fans who haven't played this before, they don't know any better, or they didn't know any better because they hadn't played it before. It matters to us, and there was nothing wrong with it. Don't accept less when it comes to future titles as well. Ask for more and stand by that. Talk with your wallets. And this should go without saying as well. When you're making a game that's based off of an original game that you made, there's no other choice to judge this new version to the old one. You have to do it. It's harder for a remake like this to be judged on its own merits when it wouldn't be where it was without the original. If you judge this on its own merits, as if this was its own game, then it's a better scoring game than what I'm going to give it later on. Previously I mentioned about the Pellheads and how they weren't in the Resident Evil 2 remake. The naked zombies, they were in the original. There is something even worse for me that happened in this game, and that was when I went into a save room for the first time in Resident Evil 3 Remake, they had a really nice remixed version of the original save music. And then when you play the segment with Carlos in the RPD, they bring out, and I couldn't believe it, and this is a bad thing. You go into the RPD, you've got a version of the Resident Evil 2 save music there. Now, the Resident Evil 2 save music is iconic. I mean, the Resident Evil 2 game has pretty much, for me, some of the best music in the series. It's up there with the Resident Evil Remake. When I went into that save room with Carlos and I heard the music play, I'll be honest, as pathetic as it might sound, I was quite insulted, because this should have been in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 3 is a step down from what Resident Evil 2 Remake was. The length doesn't bother me as much as other people. That's fine. But this game is too linear. I don't mind linear games to an extent, but this is too linear. This is too scripted. Nemesis is a disappointment. His input in the game is lacking, especially when you compare all of these criticisms and points to the original game. The original game is still better than this version to me, as is the original version of Resident Evil 2 to this one. Okay, graphics are great, but the gameplay doesn't compare to me. Resident Evil 3 gets a 6 out of 10 from me. It's a disappointing game. It's not a terrible game. If this was in a tier list, S, A, B, C, D, E, F, this would probably be a D. This would probably be a D. And if I remember correctly on my tier list, that puts it next to Resident Evil 6. And if you know me, that's not a good thing.